Hey everyone, Creek Monsters here, and with the salmon stage really heating up, I thought that for this week's video it would be best if I went over some salmon fishing techniques, and I'm talking about casting from shore for staging salmon. This isn't about catching salmon once they're spawning. I'll make a different video for that in a few weeks when that event is taking place, but right now it's all about the salmon stage. So Devil's Hole is really heating up. There's a lot of fish in there. Olcott's been heating up, so I figured, we wanted to make this how-to video for a while. Now would be the best time to do it. So I'm going to talk about just a few different types of lures I like to use. I'll be talking about the Rattletraps. I'll be talking about glow lures for nighttime. I'll be talking about spinners here. I'll also be talking about spoons, such as Cleos. And then I'll also be talking about J13s. So these are the main lures that I like to use. I know there's more, but these are what I use. And as I said in my previous how-to videos, I know I'm not the best at this. I'm still learning. These are just things that work for me. I'm relatively new at this, so it'll work for other beginners out there. So before we get started, I just want to talk about locations. So the DEC stocks salmon in certain tributaries, Lake Ontario tributaries, and typically, the mouths of these locations are where you can catch these on lures. So I'm talking Point Breeze, which is the mouth of the Oak Orchard River, the Wilson Pier, Olcott Pier at the mouth of 18 Mile Creek. But you can also kind of go up the Niagara River a little bit, up to Devil's Hole and Whirlpool, and catch salmon on lures too. It doesn't have to be at the mouth. So you go to these areas, and this is the time of the year when the salmon are not in deep water in the lake anymore. They've come into shallower waters near the mouths, and they're stocking up energy, stocking up fat, because once they make that run and they start to spawn, it's a one-way trip for them. They die, so they need to store a lot of energy, a lot of fat. So they're feeding heavily before they begin their spawning runs. And when they're feeding, their primary food source are alewives and other fish. So you're using lures that mimic fish for the most part. Now you can use skein and other things too, but I like to use lures. That's my favorite part of the salmon run. So the first thing that I want to talk about, the first lure, is the Rattletrap. All right, a very common generic lure used for multiple species. Now the Rattletrap I like especially using at low light hours because it's high noise is compensation for low visibility. I like to use it in muddy waters. So it's basically just an all-around general lure. Now I typically like to use the black and silver color. That's what I get most of my hits on, but it doesn't really matter too much. Now the Rattletrap is one of the lures where you can catch king salmon on at nighttime because it makes a lot of noise. The salmon can hear it. So all fish have a lateral line where they can detect vibrations in the water, so it's possible to catch something at night on a spoon or a Cleo or anything moving, but it's better to have something that either glows or makes a lot of noise. So at nighttime, I prefer to use glow lures. One example is the Glow Vibrax. So this is just a spinner that also glows. Another one, and this is my favorite, is the Moonshine Glow Spoons. Now I love these because they undoubtedly hold their glow the longest compared to things such as the Glow Cleo. But I've also hooked them on these. One popular lure that's actually made by a local retailer, Chuck Booker and his big Chinook fishing company, he makes his own lures, and a lot of people have a lot of luck on his glow spoons and other lures. So I'll have to give those a shot next time I go to Devil's Hole. So typically I like to use these two types of lures at low light hours, the Rattletraps or the glow spoons. Just remember to bring a light so you can charge your glow spoons before you go fishing, because that glow will wear out. For the moonshines, I probably recharge every 10 to 15 casts. For the Cleos, like 2 to 3. But I am aware that they made new Cleos that have better glowing, so it could be different, but I have yet to check those out. Now, when the sun comes up, my best and favorite lure to use are the J13s. I have two of them over here. All J13s work. They have great action, but my favorite one is the Fire Tiger pattern that you see here. This is what I get the most of my hits on. This is what I caught in my last Chinook salmon video. I think it's just the bright, vibrant colors that really get a nice appeal to the salmon. So these are my favorite lures for when the sun comes up. You can't catch them when it's lower light, but when it's pitch black, like I said, stick to lures that either glow or make noise. That's what I do. So there's also spinners. This is stuff that typically I hook more steelhead on, but Probably the most popular type is the Mepps aglia. This is an example here. Now, I like these, and I've hooked trout on these, but the thing about them is, although that they can be detected by the fish's lateral line, they don't really make any noise. So that's why I've been starting to prefer these. These are Blue Fox Vibrax spinners, and they make low-frequency sounds when they move through the water. I'm pretty sure this is the exact same Vibrax I caught my salmon on in the Genesee River video if you want to check that out. So I like Vibraxes because while they look very similar to Mepps and they have similar action, they also make that noise. So it has not only the visual appeal, but also the hearing appeal. Also, more spinners I want to check out. Chuck Booker also has his own line of spinners, and I know people that have been catching fish on these too. So I definitely want to give these spinners a try. I can't wait to use these along with his spoons. I'm very excited about using them. I would definitely check out his product. You can buy him at local sites. Follow his Facebook page, Chuck Booker. Believe it's Big Chinook One Fishing. It's a good price. You can get his glow spoons for $5-6. Typically in other places they're $7-8. So I definitely give them a try. Now, probably the most common lures I see are just spoons. And the two I think most common from what I've seen are the Kale Wobbler and then the little Cleos. Now, I haven't hooked anything on the Kale Wobbler yet, but I have hooked some fish on the Cleos. Our last Niagara Power Authority platform video with that salmon, I caught that on this exact Cleo here, 2/5 ounce. This is the exact lure that I used to catch that fish. Now, I like Cleos, but I specifically like to use these types of lures when it's a little bit brighter out because I think the sun kind of gets that metallic-y reflection out more. So that's typically when I like to use them. Otherwise, I'll stick more with the J13s. So basically, these are the 5 different groups of lures that I use for the salmon stage. Now I just want to talk about gear. And now this is where I think my biggest flaws are because I don't catch that many salmon during the stage, and I think it's because I'm picking the wrong gear. So with steelhead and salmon, once they enter the creeks, they're very line shy, which means you want to use line that has a low profile, such as fluorocarbon, etc. But in the rivers or in the Niagara River, when they're staging, I don't really think it's that big of a deal. I know people that catch them on braid. I know people that catch them on mono. I don't need to use 10-pound fluorocarbon, and that's what I've been using, and because of that, I've been hooking so many fish and not landing any, because 10-pound fluorocarbon, it's not as strong as, thicker mono or braided line. I've been losing some from bite-offs, I've been losing them from cut-offs, so if you're fishing off of Volcott Pier, and especially at low light hours, that low visibility doesn't matter, because if you're fishing when the sun's not even up, the salmon aren't going to see your braided line. So the advantage of low visibility with the cost of having weak line, fluorocarbon's not worth it. So while I use 10-pound fluorocarbon this year, I don't think you have to do that. I think what I should do is I should go a little bit stronger line, maybe 12-pound mono or maybe even braid. So I think that's definitely a weakness. So amount of line, this is big because I definitely recommend at least 200 yards. And not for the reason that the salmon's going to run 200 yards necessarily, but the fact that you will get snags a lot, especially if you're in the lower Niagara River. The strike zone is typically a little deeper, and this means you're going to run into rocks. And that means you're going to get snags, and that means you're going to have breakoffs. The salmon will break your line too, depending on what you're using. So you typically want a lot of line. Otherwise, if you only have 100, 150 yards of line, you get 3 or 4 snags, and you got a low amount. After you get 5 or 6 snags, you're at risk of being spooled by a salmon. So typically a bigger reel around the 300 or 3,000 size, I think that's how they label it, or even the 400 or 4,000 size. The Fluger President's a great reel for this. The Fluger Summit is good if you don't want to break the bank. But yeah, those bigger model reels are absolutely perfect. In terms of rods, I see a lot of people that have longer rods, like 8-9 foot. Honestly, as long as you have a rod with around fast action and medium strength, I think you're good. That fast action means that the rod bends at the tip and not a uniform curve, so you get kind of a whip at the end of your cast, so you're able to launch your lure. So like I'm using right now a 6'6" bass rod, but because of that fast action, I'm able to throw that lure out far. And I think casting far is key because you're able to cover more water, and sometimes, especially at the early parts of the stage, the salmon are out a little more and you want to reach that strike area where they are. So in terms of how you fish it, if you're on the river, don't cast in the fastest part. Think of it as this: the salmon are constantly swimming up against a treadmill, like you'd be running against a treadmill. In certain areas, the treadmill's faster. Certain areas, the treadmill's slower. If you had to stay in there and spend the least amount of energy as possible, where would you want to be? You'd want to be in the slower parts. So although you can't catch salmon in the faster areas, it's definitely best to find eddies, areas where the current kind of circulates, or areas where it slows down, where the salmon can hang out in there when they don't want to spend a lot of energy. And that one eddy in Devil's Hole that I found is where I by far hook most of any of my salmon. At the piers, it's kind of random, but I've noticed that at the beginning of the run, or the beginning of the stage, they'll be further out, and then towards the end of the stage, they're in between the two piers at Olcott, and they get closer and closer. So I don't have that much information by pier casting on the lake, but I definitely know in the rivers, although you can catch them if you cast out in the middle, stay towards the eddies and the slower water. Now, like I said, people will prove me wrong. They'll do things that I don't like to do and catch fish. This isn't, I'm not an expert. I just got into this a couple years ago. So, take it and leave it. But I'm kind of a beginner, and some of this stuff has worked for me. I just thought that I'd share it with you. Hopefully, you guys can go out and get some salmon. I know you might have wanted a fishing video this week, but I feel like this is the best thing for our weekly video to help you guys out. Next week, we'll definitely have a salmon video. I just want to remind you guys that we have a Facebook page now, so definitely check out and give our Creek Monsters Facebook page a like. That'll keep you updated on what's going on with our channel. We've been growing faster lately, making other connections, so it's just important that I update you guys on what's going on. And one last thing is that Cabela's is hiring right now. They're having a big hiring event. I have more information on a flyer that you'll see at the end. But they're hiring people because they're having a Santa's Wonderland at the end, or during around Christmas time, where you can be an elf or help out there. But as you might have guessed, Cabela's gets very busy around the holidays, so they're looking for people to hire in multiple departments. It's a great place to work. I just started working there. The staff is awesome. They're flexible. It's easygoing. They really prepare you for your work, and you get to meet some awesome people. So they're looking for people to hire. Definitely drop an application, and there's great rewards for it. Like I said, you meet great people. You can learn from them about fishing. You get the Cabela's discount. I highly recommend it. So if I were you, I'd drop that application if you're looking for work. So that being said, that's all the news for now. Stay tuned next Friday at 6:30 p.m. for our next video. Thank you for watching, and subscribe for more videos.